Happy Carolcade Week. Hi folks, Robert Lowell Goller here, and thank you for joining me for our weekly chats about local history. I'm outside of Vidler's, and I'm going to talk about Carolcade, which is this weekend, December 20th, Saturday, December 20th at 7 p.m., right outside of Vidler's. And I have the honor and privilege of being the master of ceremonies for this event. And this is my 20th anniversary. I started in 2005. I'll talk about how on earth I got the job in a little bit. But Carolcade is getting a lot of attention this year because of it being featured in a Hallmark Christmas movie, Holiday Touchdown, A Bill's Love Story. And Carolcade is actually part of the storyline, a little part of the storyline, but an interesting one, fun part of the storyline nonetheless. And they didn't use the real Carolcade in the movie. They actually recreated Carolcade in June. They filmed in June. And you probably have heard about all this because of the media attention that it got. They closed off Main Street. They tried to recreate fake snow on Main Street. We have real snow today, but back in June they used fake snow, and they recreated the Carolcade event with hundreds of extras. And since then, or since the movie came out in November, I've been getting a few questions about having taken part in the movie. It was a lot of fun. I got to sing in the movie, if you haven't seen it, and it was a fun experience as part of the background singers of the event. I got a lot of questions about what Hallmark got right and perhaps what they didn't get right about Carolcade, especially from people who have never been before. And I won't hold it against you if you've never been to Carolcade. Maybe this year you can make it a first for yourself. What they did well, I think, is capture the spirit of Carolcade. And I want to talk a little bit about the history if you don't know about it. It goes back to 1968 when a group of Girl Scouts, apparently, that's according to the local legend, showed up at Vidler's and they sang Christmas carols in the aisles of Vidler's right behind me. And the Vidler family was so touched by it that they gave them a box of candy for stopping by. The next year, the Vidlers put a little ad in a classified advertisement in the East Aurora Advertiser, who has an office just down here, right here on our main street. And they asked any group that wanted to come by Vidler store during the Christmas season of 1969, that if they were a legitimate group, bona fide Christmas caroling group, they would get a box of chocolate, a box of candy. And so that classified ad drew several people, several groups, and Ed Vidler actually kept a little list of all the people who showed up, and we have that preserved thanks to the Vidler family donating it. We have that preserved in the archives of the historian's office, that handwritten list of the groups that showed up for that singing event. Now, it wasn't Carolcade then. Well, he did this for several years into the 1970s, and you fast forward to 1973. Actually, in the early 1970s, there was this civic effort to bring some nice Christmas decorations to Main Street. They actually put more lights up. Our Main Street is decked. You can see our poles here decked with lights. But in the early 70s, they struggled. They had put up some commercial decorations that actually fell down in the wind. And so there was this effort, including on Rick Jennings, who was a local artist, to put up these wooden banners that were really East Aurora. Actually, the banners that you see along Main Street today were inspired by Rick Jennings' work. This was in the early 70s, the civic effort to bring Christmas to Main Street. So in addition to the decorations, they wanted to do a Christmas caroling event. Take that caroling event that Vidler's had started throughout the Christmas season and do it on one night. And so that civic group, a Christmas committee, got together and they met. And one of the groups, in addition to the Vidlers and the Hamiltons of the East Aurora Advertiser, was the East Aurora Ministerium, and it was a group of local church leaders. They were really involved in this event and planning this event. And so they met, and I had interviewed Ed Vidler about 20 years ago, and I'm going to write about Christmas more. I might actually do a book about Christmas in East Aurora. And I had interviewed, before he passed away, I interviewed Ed Vidler, who happens to be depicted in Vidler on the Roof behind me here. And he had credited Mrs. Hamilton, Charlie and Ginny Hamilton, for coming up with the name Carolcade. And one of the things they had said was that it was combining caroling and parade. But also later I had heard that there was a program, an entertainment program called Cavalcade of Stars, and they used the name Cavalcade and changed it into Carolcade. And so I thought that was very interesting. So it became Carolcade. They were going to debut it in 1973. We have this really neat letter in the archives of the historian's office from the ministerium that'll be featured on social media this week. That said that the ministerium agreed with the new name, and it shall be called Carolcade. And back then it was two words, Carol and Cade, and it's since been combined into one. And so they held that first Carolcade in 1973 right behind me. People showed up with lanterns and horses, a couple hundred people. Today we have a couple thousand, if not more. And they held that first Carolcade. Billie Lucas led the singing, and it wasn't like the Carolcade of today. And as they say, the rest is history. The second one held in 1974, 75, and it's kept growing since then into the carol event that you see today, the caroling event you see today, that is featured in a Hallmark Christmas movie. A couple thousand people come here and we sing Christmas carols in front of Vidler's on the last Saturday before Christmas, unless that Saturday's Christmas Eve. So you all are invited to come. So this weekend it's December 20th. What did Hallmark get right about our Carolcade, and what did Hallmark perhaps not get right? Well, I think they captured the spirit in their recreation of Carolcade, of Carolcade. You hear the voices in the background, the extras, and the excitement of the worker. One of my favorite lines from the movie is the worker in Carolcade when the main characters say, "We're just going to skip Carolcade," and she goes, "Skip Carolcade? Not on my watch." She was aghast that anyone would think about skipping Carolcade, and I think that really captured the spirit of our caroling event. What did Hallmark perhaps get wrong? They maybe captured the spirit, but they didn't capture the crowd. You'll see the aerial shots of the recreation of Carolcade, and in addition to the fact that they had fake snow, they had a recreated crowd that was a lot smaller than our real Carolcade. So if you've never been to Carolcade before, the crowd that's in the movie is not the crowd you'll see at the real Carolcade this Saturday at 7 o'clock. Some cool parts of the history of Carolcade. It has grown since I even have become Master of Ceremonies. There were a couple thousand, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 when I took over the Master of Ceremonies position in 2005, and now we have probably double that. It's become a really popular event, and I get asked occasionally, especially this time of year, how on earth did you become the Master of Ceremonies of Carolcade? And it's a simple story. Billie Lucas, who had the job for over 3 decades, almost 35 years, announced his retirement in 2004. Then a couple months later, Gary Grote, who was the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce at the time, which now sponsors a committee of the Chamber of Commerce, and a community committee sponsors Carolcade, he came, stopped me, and he had heard me sing in an event, and he knew I could sing, at least he thought so. And he asked me if I'd be interested in taking over the Master of Ceremonies position for Carolcade. And I thought about it for about a millisecond, and I agreed immediately, because I've always loved Carolcade. There's actually this great photo of my mom and I standing in the crowd looking at Billie Lucas that I share every year. And so it's sort of a dream volunteer job that I never knew I wanted. So the rest is history with that as well. And that's how I became the Master of Ceremonies of Carolcade. There really wasn't much to it other than the fact that Mr. Lucas had retired from the position, and then they asked me to take over back in 2005. So this will be my 20th anniversary this year, my 21st Carolcade. Now, one of the more interesting things about Carolcade is we had to cancel during COVID. It's only been canceled once. No weather has canceled Carolcade. Rain is awful. Snow is great. And last year it was really, really cold, and we had some snow. But if there's a trickle of snow falling down, it's just magical. But rain is usually icky. But we don't cancel. We very rarely had weather that would even make us think about canceling Carolcade. But one year, 2020, the event on Main Street was canceled. And one of the things that we decided to do, the Chamber of Commerce did a TV special in order to replace the actual event. But Don Vidler and I gathered on, we met on the roof of Vidler's with our masks on, and we sang Christmas carols, and we call it a legitimate Carolcade because a group, two of us, had met to sing Christmas carols at 7 p.m. on Saturday. So we kept the streak going. We call that a Carolcade. And so we've had a Carolcade every single year. You can actually still see the video that we did in 2020. The live streamed Carolcade from Vidler's on the Saturday before Christmas back in 2020. So we kept the streak going. So that's the history of Carolcade in a nutshell. I get a lot of questions about it. Is that the event started very small with a group of civic leaders, actually a group of Girl Scouts at Vidler's, and it's grown into this wonderful community event that takes a bit of planning because there's a lot more people, and we closed down Main Street. And a lot of folks from other communities ask how they can do their own caroling event. And certainly it would be wonderful in other communities, but it does take a lot of elements coming together. You kind of need a Main Street like this, right, in order to have a nostalgic Christmas. And some communities were trying to do them in parks, I'm not sure if they all worked out, but we do get some calls occasionally, those of us on the committee, from other communities who want to replicate Carolcade. We certainly encourage it, but there's a lot of elements that come together that make our Carolcade truly special. And so it's difficult to perhaps replicate that. So thank you for joining me for our weekly chats about local history. As always, I have my Carolcade hat ready to go, my top hat, and we're ready for Saturday, 7 p.m., December 20th on Main Street in front of Vidler's. Bring your jingle bells, bring your lanterns. That was one of the things of the old-fashioned Carolcades is people brought lanterns up to Main Street. And dressed in Victorian outfits. So not a lot of people do that anymore, but certainly not discouraged. So please join us on Main Street this Saturday. As always, thank you for keeping history alive and joining me for our weekly chats. Take care, we'll see you, and Merry Christmas.